What would you do if you discovered that all members of your family had died by drowning in the same well for over 100 years, even those who never knew how to swim and lived far from water? This is the true story of the Castañedas of Jalisco, Mexico, and the most disturbing case ever documented by Mexican forensic medicine in the 20th century. The San Esteban Hacienda stood majestically on the arid lands of Jalisco, 15 kilometers southeast of Guadalajara. Built in 1847 by Don Aurelio Castañeda, a prosperous cattle merchant, the property had been for decades the symbol of power and prosperity of one of the most influential families in the region. Its pink adobe walls and wide corridors with stone columns had witnessed lavish celebrations, memorable weddings, and meetings of the most powerful men in the state. However, in the winter of 1907, those same hallways would echo with the laments of a curse that had begun to claim its first victims. Dr. Sebastián Morales had dedicated 15 years of his life to forensic medicine when he faced the most puzzling case of his career. Sebastián was a man of science, graduated with distinction from the National School of Medicine of Mexico City, specialized in pathology and legal medicine. At 42 years old, he had performed more than 500 autopsies and had testified in the most complex criminal cases in western Mexico, but nothing had prepared him for what he would discover at the San Esteban Hacienda. It all began in the early morning of the 23rd of November, 1907, when Dr. Morales received an urgent telegram from the mayor of Tlajomulco de Zúñiga. Dr. Morales, stop. Urgent case. San Esteban Hacienda. Stop. Suspicious death. Castañeda family. Stop. Requires immediate presence. Stop. Mayor Ramirez. Sebastián prepared his medical bag and embarked on the journey to the hacienda in his carriage. The road wound between agave fields, where the peasants crossed themselves when they saw the forensic doctor pass by. There was something in the air that morning that seemed disturbing to him, a heaviness that seemed to emanate from the earth itself. Dr. Morales. Don Ignacio Ramirez, the mayor, received him a corpulent man with a grey beard and grave expression. Thank you for coming so soon. We have a very strange situation on our hands. What exactly has happened? Asked Sebastián as he descended from the carriage. It's Don Evaristo Castañeda, explained Ramirez. They found him drowned this morning in the hacienda's well, but there's something that doesn't fit, Doctor. Drowned in a well? Yes, replied the mayor uncomfortably. But Don Evaristo was 72 years old, had rheumatism problems in his knees, and the well is almost 2 meters deep. We don't understand how he could have fallen inside. Sebastián followed the mayor toward the hacienda, where a group of laborers and family members had congregated around the main patio. In the center of the patio, surrounded by a wellhead of carved stone, was the Castañeda family well. It was an imposing structure built with the same pink stone that decorated the main house, with engravings of vine leaves and grapes that gave it an almost ornamental appearance. Where is the body? Asked Sebastián. In the hacienda's chapel, replied Ramirez. The workers pulled him out of the water early this morning. Doña Esperanza, the widow, insisted that we move him there immediately. Sebastián headed toward the small chapel that stood at the eastern end of the property. It was a simple but elegant building, with whitewashed walls and a 2-story bell tower. Inside, on a table covered with white sheets, lay the body of Don Evaristo Castañeda. May I examine the body? Asked Sebastián. Of course, Doctor, replied a female voice from the shadows. Sebastián turned and saw a woman of approximately 60 years, dressed completely in black, with her hair pulled back in a severe bun. Her eyes, of a pale blue, almost ghostly, reflected deep sadness, but also something more, a resignation that seemed to go beyond the natural pain of losing a husband. I am Doña Esperanza Castañeda, the woman introduced herself, Evaristo's widow. Do what you must, Doctor. We need to understand what happened to my husband. Sebastián began his external examination of the corpse. Don Evaristo was a man of robust build, with white hair and a well-groomed beard. His clothes were soaked but intact, with no signs of struggle or violence. What most caught the doctor's attention were the deceased's hands. They were completely clean, without traces of mud or stone that would indicate he had tried to cling to the well walls. What time was he found? Asked Sebastián. Ramon, the foreman, Found him when he went to draw water for the animals, explained Doña Esperanza. That was around 5:30 in the morning. When was the last time someone saw him alive? Last night, after dinner, replied the widow. He retired to his study around 9. I went to bed early because I had a headache. Sebastian continued his examination. The deceased's lungs contained water, confirming that he had indeed died by drowning. However, there was something strange. He found no lacerations or contusions that he would expect to see in someone who had accidentally fallen into a stone well. Doña Esperanza, said Sebastian, did your husband know how to swim? Yes, doctor, she replied. Evaristo had been an excellent swimmer in his youth. For years he swam in the Santiago River when we went to visit Guadalajara. Had he been drinking alcohol last night? Evaristo didn't drink liquor, doctor, replied Doña Esperanza firmly. He was a very devout man. His only drink was the Jamaica water I prepared for him every afternoon. Sebastian frowned. A man who knew how to swim, with no signs of intoxication, without previous injuries that would explain an accidental fall. Had he shown any strange behavior lately? Anything that worried you? Doña Esperanza hesitated before answering. Well, during the last few weeks he had been having nightmares. He would wake up in the middle of the night talking about voices calling him. He said he heard someone shouting his name from the patio. Voices? Yes, confirmed the widow. He said they were voices of water, as if someone were speaking from the bottom of a very deep well. Sebastian felt a chill run down his spine. Had he consulted any doctor for these nightmares? No, replied Doña Esperanza. Evaristo was very proud. He said they were just silly dreams and that they would pass on their own. May I speak with the foreman who found the body? Of course, replied the widow. Ramon is in the stables. Sebastian headed toward the stables, located at the back of the hacienda. It was a large complex with stone corrals and red tile roofs. There he found Ramon Velasco, a middle-aged man with a face weathered by the sun and hands calloused from years of hard work. Ramon, said Sebastian, I need you to tell me exactly what you saw this morning. Oh, doctor, replied Ramon, removing his hat. It was something very strange. I arrived, as always, around 5:30 to draw water for the horses. When I approached the well, I saw something floating in the water. What did you do then? At first I thought it was a sack or something, continued Ramon, but when I looked closely, I saw it was Don Evaristo. He was floating face down with his arms extended. How did you get him out of the water? I called 2 other laborers who were in the corral, explained Ramon. We lowered a rope and pulled him up between the 3 of us. But doctor, there's something I don't understand. What thing? The boss was at the bottom of the well, said Ramon with a puzzled expression. But when we pulled him out, his shoes were completely clean, as if he hadn't walked across the dirt patio to get to the well. Sebastian felt the mystery deepening. Was there mud at the bottom of the well? Yes, doctor, replied Ramon. There's always mud at the bottom, especially after last week's rains, but the boss's shoes were like freshly polished. Did you notice anything else strange? Ramon looked around nervously before answering. Well, doctor, there's something I'm going to tell you, but I haven't told anyone else. What is it? Last night around 11 I was doing the last round of the corrals, explained Ramon. When I passed near the main patio, I heard a voice coming from the well. A voice? Yes, doctor, confirmed Ramon. It was like a whisper, but very clear. It said, Evaristo, Evaristo, come here. It repeated it over and over. Did you recognize the voice? No, doctor, replied Ramon, but it sounded like it was coming from very deep in the earth, as if someone was speaking from the bottom of the well. Sebastian returned to the main patio to examine the well more closely. It was an impressive structure with a diameter of approximately 1.5 meters and a depth of almost 2 meters. The interior walls were covered with perfectly fitted stones, without cracks or protrusions that could facilitate the exit of someone who had accidentally fallen. Doctor, a female voice interrupted him. Sebastian turned and saw a young woman of approximately 25 years with black hair pulled back in a braid and a simple blue cotton dress. I'm Carmen Velasco, Ramon's daughter, she introduced herself. I work as a cook at the hacienda. How can I help you, Miss Carmen? It's about what happened to Don Evaristo, said Carmen with a trembling voice. There are things you should know about this family. What kind of things? Carmen looked toward the main house to make sure no one was listening. Doctor, Don Evaristo is not the first Castañeda to die drowned in this well. Sebastian felt a chill. What do you mean? My grandmother worked at this hacienda for 40 years, explained Carmen. She told me that Don Evaristo's father, Don Aurelio, also died drowned in this same well 20 years ago. Don Aurelio? Yes, Doctor, confirmed Carmen. And before him, his older brother, Don Cristobal, and before Don Cristobal, the father of both, Don Emigdio, who was the one who had the hacienda built. They all died drowned in the same well. That's what my grandmother says, replied Carmen. And not just the men, Doctor, also some of the women in the family. Sebastian felt he was facing something much more complex than a simple accident. Where can I find your grandmother? She lives in town, Doctor, replied Carmen, in a little house next to the church. Her name is Doña Refugio Velasco. Could you take me to her? Yes, Doctor, but it would be better if we go in the afternoon, suggested Carmen. My grandmother doesn't like to talk about these things when there are many people around. Sebastian spent the rest of the morning completing his forensic examination. He performed a rudimentary autopsy in the chapel with the help of Mayor Ramirez and under the watchful eye of Doña Esperanza. The results confirmed his initial observations. Don Evaristo had died by drowning, but there was no evidence of physical trauma, intoxication, or illness that would explain his presence in the well. What is your conclusion, Doctor? Asked Doña Esperanza. For the moment, I can only confirm that your husband died by drowning, replied Sebastian, but I need to investigate more before determining the exact circumstances of his death. Do you suspect someone murdered him? There's no evidence of violence, replied Sebastian carefully, but there's also no clear explanation of how he got to the well. In the afternoon, Carmen accompanied him to the town of Tlajumulco. The village was typical of the region: adobe houses with tile roofs, cobblestone streets, and a central plaza dominated by a colonial church with twin towers. Doña Refugio's house was small but well maintained, with an interior patio full of plants and a domestic altar with images of saints. Doña Refugio, said Carmen, this is Dr. Morales. He wants to ask you about the Castañedas. Doña Refugio was a woman of approximately 70 years, with completely white hair and lively eyes that contrasted with her sun-wrinkled skin. She wore a black shawl over her shoulders and a rosary in her hands. Sit down, Doctor, she said, pointing to a carved wooden chair. Carmen told me you want to know about the deaths at the hacienda. Yes, Doña Refugio, replied Sebastian. Is it true that other members of the Castañeda family have died drowned in the same well? Oh, Doctor, sighed Doña Refugio. It's a very sad story. I have worked for the Castañedas since I was a girl. I have seen 4 generations of that family die. Can you tell me what you remember? It all started with Don Emigdio, began Doña Refugio. He had the hacienda built in 1847. He was a very rich man, very proud. He said he wanted to build the most beautiful palace in all of Jalisco. What happened to him? Don Emigdio died in 1859, continued the old woman. They found him drowned in the well he himself had ordered built. They said it had been an accident, that he had leaned over to check the water quality and had fallen. What do you think? I was very young then, Doctor, replied Doña Refugio, but I remember that Don Emigdio had been acting very strange the weeks before he died. He talked to himself, walked around the hacienda in the middle of the night, and was always looking toward the well. And after Don Emigdio? Then Don Cristobal died, the eldest son, continued the old woman. That was in 1878. They also found him drowned in the well, but Don Cristobal was a very strong man who knew how to swim very well. How did they explain his death? They said he had drunk too much pulque and had fallen, replied Doña Refugio. But I was in the kitchen that night and Don Cristobal hadn't tasted a drop of alcohol. Was there anyone else in the family? Yes, Don Aurelio, the younger brother, replied the old woman. He inherited the entire hacienda after Don Cristobal's death, but he also ended up the same way, also drowned in the well. In 1887, confirmed Doña Refugio. By then I was already the head cook. The night Don Aurelio died, I was awake because my youngest grandson was sick. Around midnight I heard strange noises coming from the main patio. What kind of noises? Like someone was dragging something heavy across the stones. explained the old woman. But when I looked out the window, I didn't see anyone. I only saw that Don Aurelio was standing next to the well, completely motionless. What did you do? I was scared, admitted Doña Refugio. Don Aurelio was standing there like a statue looking down into the well. He wasn't moving at all. I thought he was praying or something, but there was something very strange about the way he was standing. And then I fell asleep, continued the old woman. The next morning we found him drowned. But doctor, there's something I've never told anyone. What thing? That night, before seeing Don Aurelio by the well, I heard voices, revealed Doña Refugio. They were voices that came from below the earth, as if someone was speaking from very deep inside the well. What did the voices say? I couldn't understand the words, replied the old woman, but they sounded like they were calling someone, as if they were asking someone to come closer. Sebastian felt that each revelation made the mystery deeper. And what happened after Don Aurelio's death? The hacienda passed to Don Evaristo, who was his only son. Continued Doña Refugio. Don Evaristo married Doña Esperanza, and for many years everything was quiet. We thought maybe the curse had ended. Curse? Yes, doctor, confirmed the old woman. Everyone in town knew there was a curse on the Castañedas, a curse related to the well. What kind of curse? Doña Refugio looked around nervously before answering. Doctor, do you believe in souls in purgatory? I am a man of science, Doña Refugio, replied Sebastian, but I'm open to hearing what you have to tell me. When Don Emigdio had the hacienda built, he had to remove many indigenous families who lived on those lands, explained the old woman. They were families that had been there for generations, who considered that land sacred. But why did they consider it sacred? Because there was a natural cenote there, replied Doña Refugio, a place where they held religious ceremonies, where they believed they could communicate with their ancestors. And what happened to the cenote? Don Emigdio covered it up, revealed the old woman. He built the well exactly on top of the cenote, said it was the best way to take advantage of the groundwater. Did the indigenous people protest? Of course, replied Doña Refugio. But Don Emigdio had powerful contacts in the government. The indigenous people were expelled by force. And what happened to them? Before leaving, the shaman of the tribe told Don Emigdio that he had desecrated a sacred place, continued the old woman. He told him that the water spirits would never forgive him, and that he and all his descendants would pay for having destroyed the cenote. Did Don Emigdio take this threat seriously? Not at first, replied Doña Refugio, but after the nightmares started, I think he began to worry. What kind of nightmares? Don Emigdio said that every night he dreamed of the original cenote, explained the old woman. He said that in his dreams he saw the indigenous people performing ceremonies around the water, and that the spirits spoke to him in a language he didn't understand. And did the other family members also have these nightmares? All of them, doctor, confirmed Doña Refugio. Don Cristobal, Don Aurelio, and now Don Evaristo. They all told me they had the same dreams before dying. Sebastian remained silent, processing all this information. Doña Refugio, do you believe there really is a curse on this family? Doctor, replied the old woman solemnly, I have seen things at that hacienda that have no explanation. I have heard voices coming from the well on moonless nights. I have seen strange lights dancing over the water, and I have seen how each man in the Castañeda family ends up walking toward that well, as if something were calling him. Have you seen anyone else behave strangely near the well? Yes, replied Doña Refugio. The women in the family are also affected, but differently. How? Doña Remedios, Don Cristobal's wife, used to sleepwalk toward the well, explained the old woman. We would find her standing on the wellhead looking down. When we woke her up, she didn't remember anything. And Doña Esperanza? Doña Esperanza has also had episodes like that, confirmed Doña Refugio, especially during the last months before Don Evaristo died. Sebastian felt he needed to return to the hacienda to investigate more. Is there anyone else who can tell me about the history of this place? You could talk to Father Anselmo, suggested Doña Refugio. He has been the parish priest of the town for 30 years. He has blessed many graves of the Castañedas. Where can I find him? At the town church, replied the old woman. But doctor, if you're going to return to the hacienda, be very careful, especially at night. Why? Because the souls are more active when there's a new moon, explained Doña Refugio. and tonight there's no moon." Sebastian thanked Doña Refugio for her time and headed toward the town church. The Church of Tlajomulco was an imposing colonial building with a Baroque facade carved in pink stone and an interior decorated with golden altarpieces. On the main altar was venerated an image of the Virgin of Guadalupe, surrounded by ex-votos and lit candles. Father Anselmo, Sebastian introduced himself when he found the priest arranging flowers at the altar. "I am Dr. Morales. I am investigating the death of Don Evaristo Castañeda." Father Anselmo was a middle-aged man with graying hair and a kind expression. He wore a black cassock and carried a silver crucifix hanging from his neck. "Dr. Morales," replied the priest, "I have been waiting for someone to come ask me about the Castañedas. I have officiated the funerals of 4 generations of that family. What can you tell me about the circumstances of their deaths?" "All very similar," replied Father Anselmo. "Devout men without apparent problems who suddenly appeared drowned in the hacienda's well. What do you think of these deaths?" Father Anselmo looked toward the crucifix hanging above the altar before answering, "Doctor, I am a man of faith, but I am also an educated person. I have studied theology at the seminary in Guadalajara, and I am not given to believing in superstitions, but there are things I have seen at that hacienda that I cannot explain with reason." "What kind of things?" "I have gone many times to bless the house at the request of the widows, and I have always felt a very strong presence near the well," admitted the priest. "Every time I approach the well to bless it, I feel a resistance, as if something were opposing the blessing." "Have you tried to exorcise the place?" "Several times," confirmed the priest, "but it never works completely. It's as if whatever is there has a right to be there." "A right?" "Doctor, according to what the town elders have told me, that place was sacred to the indigenous people long before the Castañedas arrived," explained Father Anselmo. "It was a place of worship where they venerated the water spirits." "Do you believe the indigenous spirits are still present?" "I believe that when you desecrate a sacred place, the consequences can last many generations," replied the priest. "And I believe the Castañedas are paying for the sins of their ancestor." "Have you spoken with Doña Esperanza about this?" "Many times," confirmed Father Anselmo. "She knows the whole story. Her husband also knew it, but neither of them wanted to abandon the hacienda." "Why?" "Pride," replied the priest. "The Castañedas have always been very proud. They prefer to die rather than admit they were defeated by an indigenous curse." "Is there anything that can be done to break the curse?" Father Anselmo reflected before answering. "The damage that was done would have to be repaired," he said finally. "The original cenote would have to be restored and forgiveness asked for the desecration. Would the Castañedas be willing to do that?" "I don't know," replied the priest, "but if they don't, I fear the curse will continue." Sebastian returned to the hacienda at dusk. The sun was setting behind the hills, tinting the sky with orange and red tones. The hacienda looked different in the twilight light, more somber, more threatening. The shadows of the columns stretched across the main patio, creating strange patterns around the well. "Doctor," Doña Esperanza received him, "have you discovered anything about my husband's death?" "I am investigating several possibilities," replied Sebastian carefully. "Could we speak in private?" "Of course," replied the widow. "Let's go to the living room." The hacienda's living room was spacious and elegant, with mahogany furniture and pictures of saints on the walls. Doña Esperanza served coffee in china cups and sat facing Sebastian. "Doña Esperanza," began Sebastian, "I have been talking with people from town about your family's history. What have they told you?" "They have told me that other members of the Castañeda family have died, drowned in the same well," replied Sebastian. "Is this true?" Doña Esperanza sighed deeply. "Yes, doctor, it's true." "Why didn't you tell me before?" "Because I knew you would think we're crazy," replied Doña Esperanza bitterly. "Because the people in town already see us as a cursed family. If I confirmed that all Castañeda men die the same way, no one would want to work for us." "Do you believe in the curse?" Doña Esperanza remained silent for several minutes, looking out the window toward the patio where the well stood. "Doctor, when I married Evaristo 30 years ago, I was a young and educated woman. I had studied at a convent school in Guadalajara and didn't believe in superstitions. And now? Now I have seen too many things to keep denying reality. admitted the widow. I have seen my husband sleepwalk toward the well. I have heard the voices coming from the water. I have felt presences that don't belong to this world. Why didn't you abandon the hacienda? And admit that some dead indigenous people defeated us? Replied Doña Esperanza with a mixture of pride and desperation. The Castañedas have been the most powerful family in this region for 3 generations. We couldn't just flee like cowards. But now your husband is dead. Yes, confirmed Doña Esperanza, and for the first time since Sebastian had met her, he saw tears in her eyes. And I fear I am next. Why do you say that? Because lately I have also been having the nightmares, revealed the widow. I dream of the original cenote, of the indigenous people performing their ceremonies, and in my dreams they call me. They tell me it's my turn to pay for the family's sins. Sebastian felt a chill. Have you sleepwalked toward the well? 3 times in the last 2 weeks, confirmed Doña Esperanza. The first time Carmen, the cook, woke me up. The other 2 times I woke up alone, standing by the wellhead, without remembering how I had gotten there. Doña Esperanza, I think you should seriously consider abandoning this hacienda, suggested Sebastian. I can't, replied the widow firmly. This is my home. 4 generations of my family are buried here. I'm not going to flee. Then maybe we should consider Father Anselmo's suggestion, proposed Sebastian. Restore the original cenote and ask forgiveness for the desecration. Doña Esperanza looked at him with an expression of disbelief. Are you suggesting I destroy the well my father-in-law built and publicly admit the indigenous people were right? I'm suggesting you do whatever is necessary to save your life, replied Sebastian firmly. Doctor, said Doña Esperanza, rising from her chair, I appreciate your concern, but the Castañedas don't surrender to indigenous superstitions. We will find another way to solve this problem. What other way? I don't know yet, admitted the widow, but there has to be a rational explanation for all this. Sebastian realized he couldn't convince Doña Esperanza that night. May I stay at the hacienda tonight? I want to observe the well during the nighttime hours. Of course, replied Doña Esperanza. Carmen will prepare a room for you in the guest wing. One more thing, said Sebastian. Could you show me your husband's study? Maybe I'll find something that helps me understand his mental state before he died. Follow me, replied the widow. Don Evaristo's study was located on the 2nd floor of the hacienda, with large windows overlooking the main patio. It was a masculine room with shelves full of books, a solid oak desk, and walls decorated with old maps and family portraits. Did your husband write diaries or keep any kind of personal record? Asked Sebastian. Yes, replied Doña Esperanza, heading toward the desk. Evaristo wrote in his diary every night before going to bed. Doña Esperanza opened one of the desk drawers and took out a book bound in black leather. This is his last diary. He started writing in it 3 months ago. Sebastian took the diary and opened it to the last written pages. Don Evaristo's handwriting was clear and educated, but toward the most recent entries, it became increasingly shaky and disordered. The 20th of October, 1907, read Sebastian aloud. The nightmares continue. Last night I dreamed again of the cenote. There were hundreds of indigenous people performing a ceremony around the water. They sang in a language I don't recognize, but somehow I understand what they're saying. They are calling the water spirits to return to their home. Sebastian moved to the next entry. The 25th of October, 1907. Esperanza found me sleepwalking toward the patio. I don't remember leaving the bed. When I woke up, I was standing by the well, listening to voices coming from the bottom. The voices told me it was time to reunite with my ancestors. The 2nd of November, 1907, Day of the Dead. The voices are stronger than ever. All night I heard chants coming from the well. I looked out the window and saw lights dancing over the water. They were blue lights like souls in purgatory. I think the spirits are preparing something. The 10th of November, 1907. I can no longer sleep. The voices call me constantly. They say I am the last male of the Castañeda family, and that when I die the debt will be settled. But they also say that if I don't go voluntarily, they will come for Esperanza. Sebastian felt a chill reading the last entry. The 22nd of November, 1907. 907. This will be my last entry. The spirits have made me an offer. If I surrender voluntarily to the well, they will forgive Esperanza, and the curse will end with my death. If I resist, she will also die, and the curse will continue forever. I have no choice. I'm going to walk toward the well tonight. May God forgive my family for what we did. May God forgive Don Emigdio for having desecrated the sacred place, and may God protect Esperanza from the consequences of our sins. My God, murmured Doña Esperanza when Sebastian finished reading. Evaristo sacrificed himself to save me. According to this, your husband wasn't the victim of an accident, said Sebastian. He surrendered voluntarily to protect you. But that means, began Doña Esperanza, but couldn't finish the sentence. That the curse should have ended with his death, completed Sebastian. Why are you still having nightmares? Before Doña Esperanza could answer, both heard a strange sound coming from the main patio. It was like a soft chant, barely audible, that seemed to rise from the depths of the earth. Do you hear that? Asked Doña Esperanza with a trembling voice. Yes, confirmed Sebastian. What time is it? Doña Esperanza consulted the pendulum clock in the study. 11:30 at night, the same time Ramon heard the voices last night, observed Sebastian. Let's see what's happening. Both headed toward the window, overlooking the main patio. The new moon made the night particularly dark, but there was enough starlight to see the outline of the well. What they saw left them breathless. Around the well, small bluish lights had formed that danced over the water's surface. The lights moved in circular patterns as if they were following the steps of a ritual dance. And from the bottom of the well, the sound of voices singing in an ancient indigenous language could be clearly heard. Holy heavens, murmured Doña Esperanza. What are those lights? I don't know, admitted Sebastian, but I think we should go down to investigate. Are you crazy? Replied Doña Esperanza. After everything we've discovered? I have science, replied Sebastian. I need to understand what's really happening. Then I'm going with you, decided Doña Esperanza. If something's going to happen to me, I prefer to face it with courage. Both went down the stairs and headed toward the main patio. As they approached the well, the chanting became clearer. They weren't normal human voices. They sounded as if they came from very far away, or from very deep in the earth. Doctor, whispered Doña Esperanza, look at the water. Sebastian peered into the well and saw something that defied all his scientific understanding. Instead of the murky water he had seen during the day, the well now contained crystalline water that glowed with a supernatural blue light. And at the bottom, clearly visible through the luminous water, there were human figures that seemed to be performing a ceremony. Do you see that? Asked Sebastian with a trembling voice. Yes, confirmed Doña Esperanza. They are the indigenous people. They are performing the ceremony that my father-in-law destroyed. The figures at the bottom of the well moved slowly, as if they were underwater but breathing normally. They wore feathered headdresses and jade ornaments, and their faces were painted with ceremonial designs. In the center of the group was an older man who seemed to be the shaman or spiritual leader. Suddenly, the shaman looked up and stared directly at Sebastian and Doña Esperanza. His eyes glowed with the same blue light that emanated from the water. Castañeda, said the shaman with a voice that resonated from the depths. The debt is still not settled. What do you mean? Asked Doña Esperanza with courage. My husband surrendered voluntarily to pay for the family's sins. Evaristo Castañeda paid for his own soul, replied the spirit, but the desecration was so great that it requires complete reparation. What kind of reparation? The sacred cenote must be restored, explained the shaman. The well that desecrates our holy place must be destroyed, and the Castañeda family must ask for forgiveness publicly for the damage they caused. And if we do that, will the curse end? Asked Doña Esperanza. If you do that with a sincere heart, the water spirits will find peace, confirmed the shaman. But if you refuse, the curse will continue until no Castañeda remains alive. And if I have no descendants? Asked Doña Esperanza. If I die without children? Then the curse will extend to all who live on this desecrated land, replied the spirit solemnly. The damage is too great to end with just one family. Sebastian felt he finally understood the magnitude of the problem. Doña Esperanza, I think we have no choice." "I know," replied the widow with resignation. "I will do whatever is necessary." "Are you willing to restore the cenote?" asked the shaman. "Yes," replied Doña Esperanza firmly. "I will destroy the well and restore the original cenote, and I will ask for forgiveness publicly for what my family did." "Then peace will be possible," said the shaman. "But you must act soon. The power of the curse grows with each new moon." The blue lights began to fade, and the voices of the chants gradually quieted. In a few minutes, the well had returned to its normal appearance, with murky water and no trace of the supernatural presence. "Are we really going to do this?" asked Sebastian. "Yes," confirmed Doña Esperanza. "Tomorrow we will begin the work." During the following days, Doña Esperanza hired a group of workers to destroy the carved stone well that had been the pride of the Castañeda family for 60 years. It was a painful process for her, but she was determined to break the curse once and for all. When they removed the stones from the bottom of the well, they discovered the original entrance to the natural cenote. It was an underground cavern filled with crystalline water, with rock formations that had been sacred to the indigenous people for centuries. Father Anselmo blessed the place, and Doña Esperanza organized a public ceremony where she asked for forgiveness for the desecration committed by her family. Many inhabitants of the town attended, including some descendants of the original indigenous families. "In the name of the Castañeda family," declared Doña Esperanza before the crowd, "I ask for forgiveness for having desecrated this sacred place. I acknowledge that my father-in-law committed a grave error in destroying the cenote and expelling the families who venerated it. I hope this reparation brings peace to the offended spirits and ends the suffering we have caused." That night, for the first time in months, Doña Esperanza slept without nightmares. The restored cenote glowed softly under the starlight, but it was a light of peace, not of vengeance. Sebastian stayed at the hacienda one more week, documenting the entire process for his official report. In his conclusions, he wrote that Don Evaristo's death had been a suicide motivated by mental disorders caused by family guilt, but personally he knew the reality had been much more complex. Doña Esperanza lived many more years at the hacienda, which became a pilgrimage site for people interested in the indigenous history of the region. She never remarried, dedicating the rest of her life to repairing relations between her family and the local indigenous communities. The restored cenote became a symbol of reconciliation, and no more strange deaths were ever reported on the property. The water spirits had finally found the peace they sought, and the Castañeda curse came to an end. Dr. Sebastian Morales never forgot this case that profoundly marked his perspective on the limits of science and the importance of respecting the beliefs and sacred places of all cultures. His official report became one of the most studied documents in Mexican forensic medicine, although the complete version of the supernatural events was never revealed to the public. Well, dear listeners of Terrafonia, here ends this chilling story of the Castañeda family and their century-old curse. I hope you have enjoyed this tale that reminds us of the importance of respecting the traditions and sacred places of all cultures. If you like this story, don't forget to give the video a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more terror tales that will keep you awake at night. You can also activate the notification bell to be the first to hear our new stories. Remember that all the stories we tell on Terrafonia are completely fictional, although some may be inspired by legends or traditional tales. Our goal is to entertain you and perhaps make you reflect on the mysteries that surround us. See you in the next episode of Terrafonia, where we will explore another dark corner of the world of terror. Until then, have sweet dreams, if you can sleep after this story. Goodbye, and may darkness accompany you.